Please welcome Kyle Price, Alex Singer from Voldex, and Felipe Lucas from Rogue Unit.
Navigating acquisition. So thanks for joining us here. I'm Kyle Price. I lead corporate development at Roblox, and we've got an amazing panel of experienced developers here who will share insights from their experience doing this. Hopefully what you come out of today's session with is a pretty balanced view on why you might pursue an acquisition, selling your studio, part or all of it, and also why you might want to stay independent and wonder some of the practical implications of that. And then also, if you did decide to pursue that, maybe some practical tips on how you might be prepared or navigate that. So hopefully that's what we cover here today. Two housekeeping things real quick. Our amazing legal team wanted me to remind you that this is not legal nor financial advice here. And the second thing is we should have time for Q&A, so please be thinking of things that you might want to ask the panel here, and we should have time for that at the end. So why don't we dig in? Alex Singer, CEO, founder of Voldex. CEO and founder of Voldex. Thank you for joining us today. 10 acquisitions or more, I think, under your belt. Is that right?
Yes.
Including the most recent one with Brookhaven, right?
Yes.
So congratulations on that. Maybe start off, tell us a little bit more about what you're up to these days. And if you could touch on, because you've seen many acquisitions yourself and you've probably looked at many, what do you think are some good motivations and good reasons why people might pursue that?
Sounds great. First off, thanks so much for having me. I'm Alex Singer, the founder and CEO of Voldex. We're the home for the most entertaining and enduring Roblox games. We own Brookhaven, Driving Empire, and NFL Universe. And our strategy is to acquire and then integrate and then sustainably grow top Roblox experiences. As for the question of what are some good motivations we've seen, or at least common motivations we've seen when a creator is considering selling their game, the first would be to see immediate liquidity. So money today is more valuable than money in a few years. And when selling a game, a creator could see several years of earnings up front for their title. So that's really valuable. The second reason would be freeing up time. As all of you know here, running Roblox games is really, really tough, and it takes a lot of time. And creators sometimes, when they're several years into a game, and they maybe just want to spend time on a different game or relax with their family or something, freeing up time is a great reason we see for selling one's game. And then the third reason would be accomplishing more. So some creators are amazing at one part of operating a game, but don't have experience with a certain part. So an example could be when we acquired Driving Empire, the creator didn't have partnerships with all the car manufacturers, and that's a value add. Voldex was able to bring in all the car brands, and so that's really another reason we see.
Thanks for sharing that. I think that last one is one I've heard and come across a lot, as where a developer kind of wants to take their game to the next level in some regards, and they need some help in a certain area, and they find that strong partnership. Felipe Lucas, thanks so much for joining us, another seasoned developer, originally from Brazil, and you're focused now on bringing brands' visions to life on Roblox. And interestingly, you kind of seen the other side of this, where you sold your studio a number of years back and have been operating successfully as part of another company for many years. So maybe tell the audience here what you're up to, and maybe you could touch on some of the things that you might expect to change when you go through something like this.
Perfect. First, thank you, Kyle and Roblox, for having me here, and Alex for sharing his experience too. It's very valuable. I think a little bit of context is needed first. Back in 2021, 2022, we were just a small studio in Brazil, indie, completely indie, around 5 people. And Roblox was gaining a lot of traction in the country. We had just participated in the accelerator program, and we were launching an experience for the biggest sports channel in Brazil. Around that time, all that traction got attention of investors. And one of those groups decided to acquire our company and fund our expansion as well. After the acquisition, some things definitely changed. Some for the better, others not so much, but it's normal, like everything in life. On the challenging side, our production management had to be a lot more structured from day one. We had to start to deliver faster, but with the same quality as before. And we had to create a lot of reports for stakeholders. So those things often pull us from the fun part of creating experiences, but they are normal, they are necessary. On the other hand, our budget grew significantly, and we were able to expand our team. We doubled the size of the team. We created 2 different departments in the company, art and design and IT, and we were able to give a better leadership for each part of the company. And our creative process stayed largely the same. So it was a great part of it.
That's great. That's great. Thanks for sharing that. Maybe we could double down on some of the stuff you touched on there, Philippe, and talk even more about the practical implications of what might change and what it might mean to be part of another company if you were to sell all or part of your studio and join another one to keep operating. So Alex, you want to start us off there?
Yeah, sure. With any decisions, there are, trade-offs, I guess. One of the trade-offs when considering selling one's game is it could limit financial upside. So if you no longer own the entire game and things go amazingly, you might make less money in the end. The other trade-off I think would be loss of control. So you won't have full control over the game anymore once you have a business partner or no longer own the game. And the next trade-off I think we've seen is really like earnout risks or revenue share risks, because when you're selling your game or part of your game to a group, you're really tying your wagon to that group, and your success, and your economic success, and also like how much you enjoy your working life after that really depends on the quality of the group that's acquiring your game. So it's really important to do a lot of due diligence yourself on the potential acquirer that you're working with. So an example could be if you sell your game to a company that doesn't know how to operate the game well, then you might not, your earnout, they might not hit that, or the revenue share that you thought you would see maybe isn't as great. So I think those would be some of the trade-offs we've seen.
Oh, thank you. And Philippe, you touched on this in your first part, but do you have some other things to add?
Yeah, I think that you have to reflect that if that is for you as well, because it's not for everybody, as we were saying. You have to first reflect upon your team culture. Does your team have a free culture, free development culture without tight deadlines or something like this? Some investors might want to push you towards a more corporate environment, so it can be tough for you on that side. You need to reflect if you really need the financial means at that time. Is your game already successful? You already have the financial means. So maybe what you're looking for is just some specialist for that area that you're lacking in your team, and without giving up equity. You have to reflect on your own personality as well. Are you someone that often changes direction of stuff? For instance, I need to change the monetization model of my game just because, or abandon a project halfway through because you had a new great idea. On that case, might be frustrating having a contract with an investor or acquirer, because they are looking for consistency and commitment towards deadlines and budgets. And there's also a legal risk, of course. Usually investors have more legal power and resources than you. So if things go wrong, you might end up in a tough legal battle. So if you're not ready for that type of responsibility or risk, maybe it's better to stay independent.
Thank you. Those are really good. Maybe I can highlight something that I think underlines what both of them said, which is about aligning on expectations. I think, at Roblox, we've been fortunate to bring on around 15 great teams with some really cool technology. And as part of that, in the early stages of really getting to know the other party, right? Doesn't matter what the situation is, but really taking the time to get to know each other and aligning on expectations. You'll, of course, discuss financial financial expectations and probably some legal ones and stuff. So there'll be things you'll discuss, but really taking the time to figure out what's important for you on expectations. It might be something that you think is very specific to how your team runs and you really want to preserve that. Talk about that up front and make sure you're aligned on that. And then another thing that I'd highlight here is really, this is a time to be authentic. Like in a negotiation, of course, there's some posturing and there's some times when you need to negotiate in certain ways. But I think especially in the early phases, as you said, reaching out early, getting to know the other party, I think it's a really good time to be authentic, because certainly in the situation where you're going to join that company and build together with them for hopefully many years to come, you really want to be confident that that's going to work out. And you got to, really have the judgment and intuition that it's going to be a good fit. Okay, great. So moving on, we've talked about how, at least our belief here when we've talked backstage, is that this probably applies to a fairly small portion of developers out there. Like maybe it's partially the Roblox ecosystem, but a lot of people out there, the best path is to stay pursuing their creative vision themselves, like independently. But there are a percentage that this could be relevant and interesting for. And so maybe we could start to provide some more practical tips on how to be prepared and maybe even how to navigate that. And actually, Philippe, why don't we start with you?
Sure. My friends often look to know very specific things, like how much can I sell for, or what's the salary like. Of course, there's some things I can say, others I can't because of NDA. But I usually advise them by saying you have to make a list of all your needs, or your team needs, or your team pains. And if you already have that specific investor you're looking, you need to see if that investor matches those needs. In our case, we were looking for someone who could help us with client acquisition and funding our expansion. So that's what we prioritized. After that, you need to align everything internally, make sure that all your peers are together with you, you're all on the same track, get your non-negotiables together, because it is very important. And as I said before, some investors might want you to go towards a more corporate route. So if you're not sure you're up for that task, test it before, test it with your team, see if everyone is on board with it, because it's better to know upfront than finding out afterwards that you're not ready for that or that's not for you.
Great, thanks for sharing that. Alex, do you share some?
Yeah, thanks, Philippe. I think there's maybe three. The first is having clear motivations and understanding why you want to potentially sell your game or a part of it. And that way you can sort of optimize for the right deal structure and the right group. So for example, if you don't want to work on the game anymore, then you should make sure you're selling your game to a group that's able to operate the game without you. Or if you think the game has a lot of future upside, you might want to have more tied to the game's performance and so on. So that's really important. The next would be really legal hygiene. And this is a good idea regardless of if you're looking to sell your game or not. What we've often seen is a lot of friends making games together on Roblox, and there might not be contracts between all the parties involved in the game. And it might not be clear who is an employee of the owner, who is a contractor of the owner, who is working in exchange for a revenue share, but maybe doesn't own a % of the game. So all these things are important to iron out, ideally before looking for a sale, but even that can also be ironed out afterwards, and the acquirer can often help with that. The other point I think would be timing. So what we've seen is that brand new Roblox games are typically valued a lot lower than a game that is established. So if your game maybe just launched, if it shows some stability for a year or maybe even a few months, that game will be potentially a lot more valuable. So that considering the timing, is this the right time to sell one's game? And also if a game is declining sharply, that's not the right time to sell the game. There might not be a lot of people interested. So I guess motivations, legal hygiene, and timing would be the three.
Those are great. Thank you both. I've certainly heard the legal hygiene one as kind of like you said, it's good business practice regardless, right? There's a lot of partnership and collaboration when people are getting together and building things. The IP, who's owning the IP that different people are working on, I think is a pretty material one. And then the employment relationship. If you have a rev share, does that mean you actually have an ownership in the company, or is it just that arrangement? Is it for a finite time? Different things like that, which again, I think are just good business practices to try to understand. Fantastic. I've got one more prompt for the panel up here, and then if we have any questions, that's great. And if you want to go get ready for the rewards, that's okay too. Last prompt is basically just some key takeaways. I think you've covered a handful of things here that I hope are somewhat practical and also just help people think about this. Philippe, you want to leave the crew with a few takeaways? Yeah.
Sure. First of all, make sure that the investor or the acquirer knows Roblox. And at least knows Roblox as much as you do, because if you're getting into a negotiation with someone who doesn't understand the platform or the whole ecosystem, the community, down the road you might have some headaches because of that. Second, get legal support from the very beginning. It's very important. Bring your advisors with you in every single conversation. Even with your peers and with the investors as well. Don't underestimate your value, your team's value, or your game's value. Never underestimate that. Get your own valuation. Don't just accept whatever number is thrown at you. And last but not least, always run a worst-case scenario analysis for each and every clause of the contract. I know it might seem negative, but trust me, it will help protect you from future disputes. The whole idea here is prepare for the worst, but always aim and work for the best outcome.
That's amazing. Thank you. Alex?
Thanks. I think the main takeaway is, you're speaking with an acquirer. They're going to be looking at your game, analyzing the metrics, meeting you and your team. They're going to do a lot of due diligence on you and your game. It's equally as important for you as a game creator to do your due diligence on the party you're speaking with. You should, speak with every single creator that you can meet, that you can reach, that has sold their game or part of their game to that group to see what their experience was. You should Google the company to see just really do your due diligence on the acquirer, because in the end, you're really hitching your wagon to them. And the quality of your life post-sale and during the sale process and your economic outcome really depends on the party you're associating yourself with.
Thanks. I think it's a really good point about the two-way experience. I think, if the big company is talking to a smaller company about potentially acquiring them, it can feel kind of one-sided. And of course, there are times in that process where maybe initially the bigger company or the acquirer really wants to get to know you. And so maybe you're sharing a bit more information at that point. And I think that's fine. But throughout the process, there should be kind of an ebb and flow of that to where you feel like you're really getting to know them. One thing we end up doing when we're talking with teams is as the process kind of progresses, we end up spending a lot of time kind of brainstorming what they would do together with us. It's a great topic because it is the topic of what you would do together. And it's a great way to get to know each other. It's a great way to see how they think, how they might navigate certain things, and whether you really would want to be problem solving with those people in the future. So that's been helpful for us. Okay, great. We're going to go to Q&A now. That was probably a quick run through. We intentionally didn't want to get into term sheet deal specific things where you could probably look a lot of that up online, and instead just wanted to rely on this crew here and a lot of their experience specifically on Roblox to share their own stories. So hopefully that was helpful, and if anybody has any questions, there's a couple mics. Please go ahead.
Testing? Okay. This is a question for Alex. So you said you have about 10 companies with Voldex right now, 10 games, correct? I was curious, are there any of these game owners that when they sell their game and then they come back and realize they might have sold it too early or something happened and they want to try again and figure it out? How do you manage a situation like that if you have? And I'm just curious about your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think I haven't had that experience where a creator sold their game to Voldex and told me they regretted it. So I haven't, gone into that conversation yet. But I think it's really a personal decision of whether or not that's the right idea for somebody. And in our case, every creator that we've acquired a game from, I think would say positive things about their experience working with us. And when we talk with creators, we always say like, hey, you can speak with anyone we've acquired a game from, we'll introduce you, and they'll all say positive things.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thanks. Go ahead.
So my question will be, how do you handle acquisition for games using third-party assets? Like, for example, licensed music that may not be owned by the seller.
Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm happy to take this one. So in a contract, they'll typically be, in the contract, the creator will typically represent that they own, what they're selling, they own the game, but there'll always be like a disclosure schedule where they'll mark anything that maybe is contrary to that representation that they own everything in the game. So in the disclosure schedule, the creator might write about some licensed music they have in the game, or some IP created by a freelancer that didn't sign a contract that the acquirer should know about. So that's always
And in the case that was not included in the contract, right? Like, what will you do as an acquirer?
Probably nothing. If it's not material and doesn't like make the game revenue go down to zero, or
Thank you.
Nothing would happen. It depends on the acquirer you're working with.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and I would just underline what you were saying there about disclosures. Hopefully everybody's acting in good faith. They want to work together. They think they're excited about whatever the terms are in the deal, and they're disclosing everything that they can. And of course, there are times that some things come out that weren't disclosed or weren't disclosed clearly, and you just have to decide how you navigate it at that point. How material is it or not, and are there any kind of implications from that? You want to go over here, and then we'll come. Okay, go ahead. More over here. Thank you.
Hey guys, my name's Ja. I own a studio called IX Studio. From what I've seen, we've seen a lot of pain points when it comes to non-native buyers looking to join the Roblox acquisition space without having dev background. It's the reason why we perform live ops for partners that are off platform that are looking to integrate on. But the question is, without those types of partnerships where you work with another studio to do live ops, or you work with somebody else to give you data insights, or just overall advisory, is there a way for non-devs, non-natives to acquire and see success without partnering with existing studios?
Does anybody have a perspective on that?
I'm thinking about it. I think bringing the perspective I brought earlier, it's not exactly about people who are already devs or something like this. It's more like an investor of outside of the game industry or outside of the Roblox ecosystem. So they actually don't understand the ecosystem itself, but they just don't need to be developer specific. I don't know if it answers your question, or?
Yeah, I think so.
Alex, you want to?
I'd say it's a lot easier to sell a game to a company or person that doesn't have experience with Roblox if you have a team that works on the game and you also want to join that company afterwards. A company like that just won't be able to buy a game if there's no team and you don't want to join them.
For sure. Thank you.
Okay, great. You want to maybe go to the side?
So I work with Alex, but a question I get asked a lot when I'm speaking to people outside of Voldex is, how do we navigate post-acquisition, right? What do we do with the game once it's been acquired? And I think a lot of people would enjoy that.
Thanks, Natalie. What do we do after a game has been acquired? So we will typically, staff the game with a team that's usually much larger and supercharged than what they maybe had before. So for example, on average, our game teams are around 20 people each, which is typically more than the game we acquired. So for example, Brookhaven was just one person working on the game. Now there's 20-person multifunctional team. So there's engineers, there's product people, game designers, QA, artists, and so on, that all work together to drive growth in areas that maybe the creator wasn't paying as much attention to because they had a smaller team and less resources.
Great, thanks for sharing that. Go ahead.
If we have like a bunch of games we want to sell or acquire, where is the correct channel to do it? So like if I want to sell a game, where should I contact? Who should I look for? Or how to do it? How to get started on that?
Under the chairs, everyone has an offer to buy their game.
Did you get the lucky seat?
You can contact us on our website.
Okay, but like other than Voldex, or there's any like where should we look for if you know like any public channels where we can try to find a seller or buyers in general like that?
I think I can tell about my experience a bit. For us, it was kind of natural because we were doing stuff that was getting attention from investors. So we were releasing big games and showing up in conferences, showing the game to everybody. So even talking to the DevRel, like, do you know somebody who's acquiring other games or other teams that can help you?
All right, thank you so much.
Yeah, I think, and if I could just throw in a not specific, so this isn't practical enough for you, but I would say in general, networking at a fairly early phase, I get, especially as a studio founder, you're incredibly busy and you really don't have a lot of time for just networking type things. But I do think it's healthy to always kind of force a discipline to spend a little bit of time on stuff like that. Because you never know what happens in the future, right? Like you said, maybe things go well and you want to acquire some other companies, maybe you need help in a certain area. And at some point in the journey, you met a company or a game or a publisher that was particularly strong in that area. So I think if you can force the discipline to spend time on those long-term strategic relationships and just networking, and I think the community in general is pretty open to that. Hopefully here at RDC, you had a chance to meet a handful of people. And if not, I hopefully people can refer you around.
All right, thank you so much.
Great advice.
Yeah, thanks. Go for it.
So I'm wondering, when approached by a buyer, how do you ensure the buyer is legitimate and that you won't be scammed?
If you're approached by a buyer, I guess as a studio, how do you ensure that they're legit?
I think doing your due diligence on them and see which games have they acquired in the past? How are those games performing? How did those creators feel after working with them? That's definitely, worth doing. You could also ask for maybe proof of funds from the buyer, and definitely have a great contract with the buyer. Have your own legal representation to help you navigate that.
If I could throw in 2 cents on that, which would be, as much as possible, try to take your time and don't feel rushed. I find some of the deals that get a little bit formal and rigid and maybe under time pressure, I think that's where people sometimes don't have the time to really understand the two different parties and make sure that there's alignment and that there's expectations. I think similar in your situation, I know sometimes you're not fortunate to have the time to do a lot of this, but I think taking the time to get to know that party, and I think there's an element of intuition on this. I think you've got to sniff out, is this a credible party? Is this somebody I want to work with? Do I really feel like I'm hearing the right things from references and other things, or are there some suspect things? And I think you got to follow your gut on that a little bit.
But do you ever think like an acquisition can be done safely without a contract through like an escrow or something?
Not for Roblox, it wouldn't. I don't. Would the deal get done without a contract? Is what you said?
Yeah, I mean, kind of. At like smaller scales, contracts aren't really feasible, I feel like.
Oh, never do it. Never do without a contract.
Yeah, we haven't done acquisitions without a contract before, but we have used escrows in several of our acquisitions where the creator only transfers us the game and the assets they're selling after the escrow, which could be a bank, confirms that they received all the money from us. And that's a way to avoid, avoid a bad situation.
Okay, thanks.
Sure, thank you.
Let's say you want to acquire a game owned by several people, but one of the sellers wouldn't want to share his own share. How will you deal with that? Will the deal fall through?
I think the situation is if you had multiple shareholders in a studio or a company that you were acquiring and not all of them agreed to it. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I can't speak to a studio, but I know we wouldn't proceed in that. There's, as you go through the process, there is a threshold for shareholder sign-off, and I don't think we would feel comfortable proceeding unless all of the shareholders do agree to the agreement.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, same thing.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Hello. My question is, would Roblox Corporation assist acquirers to find creators or to close deal with creators?
Well, does Roblox Corporation help acquirers? Is that what you're saying? Okay, yeah, great. I mean, as much as possible, we try to be helpful to the community, whoever that is, right? Whether that's developers or people who'd like to invest or help developers in some way. So I think to some degree, we might be comfortable trying to help make referrals or possibly reach out to people to see if they would be open to a connection or something like that. But also, we don't want to be too involved in this. So we don't want to put our fingerprint and give anybody any favor or anybody any partiality or like any preferential treatment. So, I think I'm happy to talk to you afterwards about your scenario or see if there's somebody we can put you in touch with.
Thank you.
Sure.
I have a question for Alex. When you guys are looking at making acquisitions for games, what are some sort of key signals for traction success that you look for before making those bets? And also curious how you structure the team. Like, do you keep the original team on? How much of a transition do you make? And asking from the perspective of someone who's interested in investing, maybe like eventually in these types of games, or supporting people who are already making investments.
Sure. So, we look for games that are durable and sticky. So games that we think will be around in, 10 plus years from now, at least as popular as they are today. We look for games that we can add value to and grow, and we look for games that are, material and, good financial investments for us. As for whether the creator joins, works on the game post-acquisition, that's really up to the creator. We love when creators do want to join Voldex and work on the game with us. That's when we have the best outcomes. The creator of Driving Empire worked with us on making all the cars look amazing after acquisition. Jason, who might be here, works on NFL Universe and is, huge asset to the team. And Wolfpack from Brookhaven, we worked really closely with him for 6 months, and after that, we're meeting with him every month to, get his feedback. And the best outcomes are when the creator, an original creator, works with us. But we're also open to, if creators that don't want to work on the game after an acquisition. So we can offer both, but have a strong preference for one.
Yeah, I see. And then what size checks are you guys are buying the games outright, right? Like 100%, or is it like a partial stake that you guys are doing? And kind of what check size are you guys working with?
Yeah, so we acquire games entirely. Yeah. But if a creator wants to see upside after the sale, we could provide like a revenue share, but with a fixed end date.
Yeah.
Okay.
That. Thank you.
Thanks.
Hey guys, thanks for the insights. My question is, what are the valuation methods that you are using when acquiring a game?
Do you want to take this?
Well, I think yes, and I think you should build on it for something more relevant for them. We don't invest in or buy any content, so we're buying generally teams and technology, and we're generally acquiring, like I said, probably around 15 or so that we've done over the past years that are what you call tech tuck-ins. So we generally close down their existing business and they join us full. So we really value the people and the technology itself. And so it's not a standard financial multiple valuation process, but you probably do with some of the studios.
Yeah, so what we've typically seen is a multiple of the annual earnings of the game. And a brand new game with no track record that's maybe smaller, the multiple, so how many years of earnings. Sometimes it could be months for a really small game. The acquirer will pay to the creator to own that game. And for larger games, that have, that are established and have that track record, it would be a number of years of annual earnings of the game.
Yeah. I was just going to build on. I think it's hard, especially in a scenario like this where the number of transactions and things are not absolutely massive. I think it's hard to pin down valuation metrics and multiples too much because as Alex was saying, there's so many variables, right? Like the maturity of the game, the monetization of it, the engagement, like whether the team's coming along or not. So I think there's a lot of nuances in that, and I think the data would be pretty noisy if you were trying to get some sort of like average number out of that. That's my opinion.
Got it. Thanks.
Okay, thanks.
So one more question I have is when you work with a studio, let's say I work with another studios, and we do like a ownership share. But if they have the ownership of the group, so right now there's only one owner. Well, how do I enforce the contract? Let's say a contract with someone, but what if they take the whole game down, or they just kick me out of the group? How do I enforce the contract? Or would Roblox have their hands in this to help to enforce the contract? You have any insights on that?
Maybe from your experience.
That's why it's really important to do due diligence on the acquirer and make sure they're, good people and have a good track record of, having transactions where both parties are happy afterwards. But yeah, we haven't encountered that because we don't buy a portion of a game. We've only acquired the whole game.
Okay, thank you.
Hello. So for partial game acquisition, like what's the difference between still owning the 25% and still owning the 50% after the acquisition? Like what's the difference?
What's the difference between owning a minority share or half?
Yeah, between minor and half.
I mean, generally speaking, there's some control. There's some control mechanisms that make a difference whether you're a majority or minority owner. I think outside of that, a lot of the terms of the agreement can be customized. So whether you own 10% or 35%, the rights that you have as it relates to some of the like key decision making and ability to do that sort of stuff, I think it can be fairly custom. I don't think that percentage actually dictates that. I think you said you don't generally get into arrangements where there are multiple percentage ownerships, like you go for a full acquisition.
Yes. Yeah.
Exactly. So doesn't really encounter that. We can chat afterwards if there's a specific scenario you want to explore.
All right. Yeah.
Go for it. Sorry. Maybe I'm getting the light here red that I think we're out of time. Maybe that's why the mic stopped working. I'll chat with you right after that if that's okay. I'll be right here. I'll come right back out, okay? Thank you all so much for joining us here. Hope you had a great RDC.
Thank you.